I will record it on my computer and then send you a link to it. So, all right, let me reshare now. So let me introduce myself just to everyone. My name is Telka Clem. I work for Western Computer. I've been with Western Computer going on 12 years now. It's hard to believe. And I am going to be your trainer slash facilitator down the road of using Continia to read in your purchase invoices and then send them out for approvals. So we're just starting down this road. When we leave today, I'm going to encourage you, and I'm sure Laura would too, Laura and Philip, encourage you to get into Continia and, you know, start playing with it, for lack of a better word, playing with it, to start getting the touch and feel of what it feels like to start learning these documents. It's a computer, and I just say that to, you know, hopefully you won't get discouraged. More than likely, I'll make it look easier than it was for me when I started using the product. It takes a touch and feel, but you will get there, and you'll kind of figure out the rhythm of the documents and things like that. So, and it's really kind of cool, that fact that, you know, computers can now read printed pieces of paper and then populate in, you know, the information that we would otherwise have to type. So it's kind of nifty that it can do that. I am going to start from the beginning, because once we complete the training and go live, Continia is yours, and you need to know all the ins and outs about it. And that's another way these recordings will be helpful, in the fact that, you know, if you have something you need to look back to, you always can. And I will number them session 1, 2, and 3 so that you kind of have that idea. So can everyone see my screen? I am in your test environment.
I can.
Great. Thank you.
I can see it.
Perfect. Oh, I was also going to tell you, although I can talk for 2 hours, I don't want to. I want this to be a conversation. So if you have questions, please don't hesitate to ask. You're not going to offend me by stopping me. I'd much rather have a conversation than this just be me giving you information for the next 2 hours. So, alrighty, you're going to notice that if I go to the department menu, you've got a new option here on your department menu called Document Capture. We will use this here in just a moment, but where I want to go first is the application setup of Document Capture. So I clicked into the administration, application setup, and again, you'll notice that Document Capture is up here on the top left-hand corner. I'm going to click there, and you're going to get a list of the items that have to be set up to use Document Capture. Continia has different solutions. They have Document Capture, they have Expense Manager, they have Document Output. So Document Capture is one of the modules that you're using. So you may hear me refer to it as Continia, you may hear me refer to it as Document Capture. They are one and the same in your system, in that we only have engaged the Document Capture at this time. So you're going to notice that as well as the user setup within NAV, there are Continia users, and then there is a Continia user setup. I'm going to click here in the Continia users first. And you're going to notice that hopefully I've gotten each one of your user IDs added to this list. Now, what is not populated here is your email addresses. Laura, you can either do this quickly right now if you wanted to, or if you wanted to, you know, do this as homework, this is perfectly fine. So everyone's email address you'll want to add here. Now you're going to notice that I have a 1 next to the Western Computer email address, in that I have set my user ID up in one of the companies. We're going to set each one of you up in this company, so then you would then have access to all of these companies. The other option here, if I go to edit this list, is whether this user, well, it's assuming a new user. So let me.
Okay, there's actually 2 other people that are missing from that list, so you can actually add one of them if you'd like.
Okay, great. Who would it be?
Cynthia Letard.
Is it not? That's not it. Is it CI?
Cindy, are you under Cindy or Cynthia in here?
You unmute.
I'm not seeing any.
The username is going to be first initial, last name.
Cynthia.
Oh, I'm sorry. There we go.
Okay.
Thank you. All right. So,
And also, can you please add Unor? Comment?
sure.
Thank you.
Maybe I got that right. And she's a Windows user, so it's automatically assuming her as well. And let's see, full name. Who did you say? I'm sorry.
Unor. UNUR.
Go. And I'll let y'all populate the emails. So, but if I came in and wanted to add someone that was not in NAV, I could do that. It may be that like project managers out in the field are not part of your NAV system, but they do have like an email address. They are on Windows. So you could add them. You see how this says no NAV login? If this person has a NAV login, it's automatically going to choose Windows. But users for Continia's document capture do not have to be NAV users, is where I'm going with this, so that they can use the web portal to upload their documents and things along those lines, instead of having to be a NAV user. So you're not going to have to assign all your project people out in the field a NAV license. Do they have one already, just because of other things you might be doing?
Some people in the field do have NAV login, some people don't.
Okay. So your Continia license will cover any of those people that don't have a NAV license. So, you know, they don't have to be NAV users. So you would add them here as well. The send welcome email, don't worry about that. We're going to handle that in a different place. The Continia user setup will allow us to do this as well. So this is all that's on this screen. I'm going to say okay, back up one, and go to my Continia user setup. Seemed to be popular this morning. And I'm going to actually create a new user. And when I drill down into my list, you're going to see again like a full list. So let me just, let's see, Laura, what is, I can just find it here real quick because it's in alphabetical order. What is your last name, Laura?
Bilodeau. Go a little further up. The only one with the email. If you go down.
Ah, thank you. Cool. Alrighty. So in pops her name, email. We're not going to have to assign salesperson and purchaser codes. Salesperson and purchaser codes are one way, but not the only way, to direct approvals through Continia. We're actually going to do a different route or use a different route because of the specifics of how we want to be able to distribute based on job number and things like that. So you can leave the salesperson and purchaser code alone and say okay. The only other thing that you might want to add to this situation is can this person edit posting lines from the web portal? When someone is going to get a document through the web portal, they're going to be able to see the document that's coming across in nav, as well as a picture of the PIC or PDF or whatever you've gotten. At that point, we want to say, are we going to allow this user to make changes to this document through the portal? I do believe that that's something that y'all want to be able to do. You want your field people to be able to make adjustments, whether it's job number or dimension or something along those lines. So you would want to edit this list and check this box. And then we want to, at least for right now, do the all documents so that they can search and see all documents. We may want to get to the point where it's only the documents that they own that they can see. But at this point, let's just leave it at all documents for testing purposes. When we pull down our approval specs and bring them a little tighter, we may change that, but we'll leave it at all documents right now. Any questions so far?
Not for me. Anybody else?
Yeah, we don't have questions right now.
Cool. Sounds great. You're going to notice up here that I've got a couple of options in my ribbon. I can set up approval user groups, and we may end up doing that so that we don't have to assign approvals to every user, that we can actually create rules around a group and assign each user to a group. I don't know if you do your permissions that way today, but it just makes it easier when, you know, if people are going to have the same type of approvals, we just create a group and we assign them to the group, and we don't have to, you know, individually list all of their approvals. Up underneath here also, I can set approval permissions for each user. Let me change this to 3. I'm going to change this to apply to all my list. So that I can control the types of edits someone can do from the web portal. Say I only wanted my folks out in the field to be able to make changes to, you know, items, maybe dimensions, and a job. I would give them permissions to only be able to edit items dimensions, and jobs. So I'd create a line for each of those. Let's say I'm going to choose dimensions, and I can limit then the dimensions that they have the ability to change. So there's a lot of permissions once we start setting up users and deciding what we want them to be able to change and what we don't want them to be able to change, that we can control. I tell you all this right now so that you can start thinking about this, because you want to start thinking about, do we want them to be able to change the GL account number? Do we want them to be able to change the job or the task number or the amount? Things like that, so that we can start planning those controls, those approvals. We're not going to set any today because, like any other permissions, it starts kind of tightening the situation down. But certainly you want to start thinking about it and discussing this internally amongst yourselves. So when we get to that point here in a couple of weeks, I mean, it's coming up quick. When we get to that point, you'll know what to tell me, and then I can instruct you on how we would set those approvals.
So Telka, one quick question. If no approvals are set, is there no limit, or do we have to grant approvals for them to have access at all?
We do have to grant approvals if we want them to be able to modify. So we do still have to call that out. But if we're going to do like a full-blown, we're going to let them change GLs, dimensions, jobs, all of that, we would create a user group that had those permissions and then just sign everyone to that user group.
Okay.
But good question, because we do have to give them permission to make those change. So this does allow as well as limit. After we have all of that set up for users, we do export users. Anytime you make a change to a user's email, permissions, add a user, anything like that, anything you do to this screen, you need to get in the habit before you leave it to export users. This is the only way the portal knows the changes you've made. Nav knows the changes you've made, but the portal doesn't. So if you add a user here and they can't see the portal, it's because you haven't exported the users. So this is extremely important. You can also send a welcome email. When you send this email, what it does is it sends a little like form that says, welcome to Continia document capture. Here's your user ID, which is their email. Please sign on to this link to connect to the web portal and that type of stuff. So that's what the welcome email does, is get them signed up on the web portal. And we'll probably want to do that after today's training. In fact, we will want to do this after today's training, and all of you should get a welcome email and then sign on to that to get to the web portal. And it's really self-explanatory and gives you the link and all that good stuff.
So Telka, are all of the user setup is done here and then pushed to the web portal, and then there's no user setup on the web portal, or there's separate user setup on the web portal?
No, it's all done here and pushed to the web portal. There's no setup to be done on the web portal. It's just a depository for all the information that you create in NAV.
Got it.
Cool. Any other questions about this?
Hi, Stella. I have a question regarding for the approver. If we don't give them an access to update the GL account, the amount, would there be a section for them to put their comments saying, changes that they want to make for the invoice?
Yes, there certainly is.
Okay, that's great. Yeah, we just want to make sure that they have a section where they can put the comments of what we need to do.
Sure, absolutely.
Thank
And
you.
we'll actually be looking at the web portal in our next training. What I'm going to do today is teach you how to actually read the documents in, and then next time we get together, I'm not sure when that is. I don't have the schedule on top of my head, but next time we get together, then we'll actually register a document and go to the web portal and see what it looks like on that side, and so forth and so on. Any other questions? All right, we'll move on. The third training we'll have we'll be coming back to our users in that we'll be setting up approvals and how we want the approvals to route and things like that. All right, so let's back way up. After we have the users set up, you'll notice we've got users set up, user groups. Then we start walking through the approvals, the approval flows, and we will do that, like I say, on our third meeting, and how to set up those approvals. Then we start dealing with the documents down here. I'm going to click on document categories, and you're going to notice that we are talking today about purchases and purchase invoices, but document capture actually can handle other types of documents. So the standard environment has contact related documents, GL documents, sales orders that can create sales orders from purchase orders from a customer. I know y'all probably don't have that environment since you're in the housing business. And then purchases, which is what we're going to be looking at today. Each one of these has a card that drives it. There is a lot of information on this document category card, and I want to highlight some of it. Here again, I don't expect you to remember it all, but you need exposure to this to start knowing how to find some of this information. So, of course, in true NAV fashion, we've got a code, we've got a description. Then this document category, we're having to call out the source table and fields that we're looking up to. So we're looking at the vendor table. The primary key is the vendor number. We're also going to pull in the name and the search name, and you'll see that when I get over to looking at some of the documents, that my header actually contains all of this information. We can, within your department, your AP department, because you will actually be managing the documents, we can allow deleting of the documents. You're going to want to leave this checked and not uncheck this. There will be times that you need to delete a document for one reason or another and then reread it in. And we can turn on the registered document automatically as you start using it for go live. We don't want to do that for testing. I want you to have to do it the painful way. No, I'm teasing, but you want more control over it than it registering it automatically. But somewhere down the road, you might feel comfortable enough to have it register all the way in. When we get over to the document, I will show you what I mean by that, and you'll understand why we don't turn that on immediately. when documents are read into the OCR, which is a way of reading this text into a digital form, it's an optical reader. We're going to populate this document into the purchase header and the purchase line. When a document comes into document capture for the purchase category, that document, when it's registered, becomes a purchase invoice, not a purchase order, not a posted purchase invoice, but a purchase invoice. Do y'all know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
Cool. That whole midstream of purchase invoices, some people don't use that area of the system. Everything starts from a purchase order and then they post and get posted purchase invoices. There's actually a midstream there that is a unposted purchase invoice. That's what this document creates.
Yeah, Rachel, it's kind of the same as when we do the rapid start for land dev. It'll come through the same. It's the same pattern.
Oh, okay, got it.
I have a question.
Sure.
So on what you're setting up here, the invoices that we process would go straight to being purchase invoices. This uses purchase orders in NAV. Is there a different setup that would have to be done to be able to match those to the purchase order receipts?
No, at the document level, we're able to match the lines to a purchase order. We are. So, but what ends up happening is, and you probably don't use NAV this way, but you can create a purchase invoice and then pull receipt lines into that from a purchase order. That's what this does. It actually links itself to the purchase order receipt lines.
Okay.
But it doesn't post against the purchase order. It creates a purchase invoice.
I gotcha. Okay.
Great questions. This next area down underneath the template fast tab is showing you the templates that are being used to learn each one of these documents. We have a purchase ID identification template. We have a master template that kind of sets all the defaults that the system uses to learn a document for the first time. Then you'll notice that I've got 2 additional templates. Actually, there may be more here. There's 3. There's 3 templates here that are actually assigned to vendors because I've been doing some testing to make sure that we could link up these documents. Each vendor document will have an individual template of its own. That template holds the specific information for learning the document that that vendor sends you. I was naive in the fact that when I started working with Continia, I don't know, months ago, I don't even know how long it's been now. I really kind of thought invoices, had a general look to them. I knew that they varied from here to there, but I thought, pretty much they had a general look to them. Oh boy, have I learned differently. So each vendor, the system creates a template and it starts carrying the rules about, what to look for on that document. The OCR processing is just simple information that, tells us we're looking at black and white, how many pixels to look at. But this split is pretty important. You have this brand look group that They may send you, I know that the PDF I have from you has 2 different invoices within that single PDF. I'm assuming they send a PDF to you like that. Maybe not. That may have just been the way I received it. But when we have 2 different invoices within a single PDF, we can tell the system to split those invoices out because they have 2 different invoice numbers, and you know they need to be paid separately. I've marked the system to split documents automatically. I've put a checkbox here. This is not by default normally. It's normally not checked, but for your system, I have told it to check. And I have told it to split on either a blank page, if it finds a blank page, a source ID, or a separator field. I have set the invoice number up on the Bramilton group as a separator field. And I will show you that so that when it's reading in that group's PDF, if it finds, each time it finds an invoice number, it goes, oh, this is a new document, and it breaks it apart. The email down here is the email that the purchases should be sent to, the purchase documents. This is a lot of tech information, but here is your email address. If you don't have this email address, you'll want to grab it and hold it somewhere so that you know, you can use it first couple of times, then it'll be remembered in your contacts. But this is the email address you will give your vendors. Please send your invoices to continia@vanmetroco.com. If I were also doing some sort of sales documents, the sales documents would have their own email address. This is just for purchase documents. When I say purchase documents, let me make sure, yeah. Let me pull over here. So I've got an email. Here is that group's document in a PDF form. So here is a check request. That's on page 1. Here is a second check request. It has a different invoice number. That's page 2. And then we've got some email information, so forth and so on, and maybe some balancing information. This is what I have attached to this email. This is my Continia Van Metro Co. email address, and I'm going to send this to my OCR. This is the OCR address. That's how you'll tell your vendors to send you documents into the OCR. Either that, or if they email them to you, you could send them to that address. You also can drop and drag a document that you've got, you know, from some other source. Maybe they mailed it to you, you scanned it in, and you're going to drop it onto the document. Any questions about the purchase document category? We're going to leave here and go look at a document. Go ahead.
I just want to be clear about the modes here. So we can use that email address for vendors to submit invoices to us, and the system is set up to automatically review that email address and pull documents in.
Yes, sir.
And then looks like it's set up to delete them. I think delete the email after it pulls the document in.
Yes.
So at that point, I guess I want to understand that it's at that point it is a unposted purchase invoice, or it's sitting someplace where we need to act on it?
It's sitting somewhere. You need to act on it, and that's where I'm going to take you right now.
Great. And then there are other ways to also pull those in. So like if someone emails a PDF invoice directly to Rachel, she doesn't have to forward it to that email address. There's other ways that she can also pull that in.
She can drop it and drag it into, or drag and drop it into the document. But honestly, Philip, the easiest way to handle it is to forward it to the email.
Okay. And that's fine. I just want to make sure that
Yeah.
people understand, that there's different ways to do it. And then I think
Yes.
you also said we could, if we get a hard copy of a document, which we'll probably get a lot of as we transition into full use of this, we can then scan those documents directly in.
Yes. Well, you would scan them onto a location on a server or a hard drive or something. A computer or something like that. And then at that point, you could either, grab that document and email it to the OCR, or drag and drop it onto a document.
Our scanners, at least I think all of our scanners now have the ability to scan directly to an email address.
Oh, that'd be great.
So just for everyone's knowledge, if you were scanning, invoices, you would scan it and then send it to continia@meterco.com instead of your own personal one. So we may need to, Laura, we may need to set that up as like part of the address book. I know you can like type one in, but just to make things a little easier, it'd be nice if it were set up in the address book for the scanners.
I think when Mike set everything up to actually create this, I think it automatically pairs with the printers, but I'll double check with him.
Okay.
And then Telka, one other question. So when the invoice gets sent and goes to the email, Continia will go through, we'll grab it and put it to wherever we have to do something else at this point. Does it actually keep a copy of the invoice in Continia as well? So like if I wanted to pull the invoice to see whatever on it, or if the auditors asked me for a copy of a particular invoice.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So this delete after download, the only thing that's being deleted is there's an email folder out there like y'all have in your Outlook. It's just deleting it out of that folder so that thing doesn't get monstrous, It's not what it's not doing is it's not deleting it out of our system. We're going to have a full copy of the whole thing within NAV. And that's where we're going to go right now. So I'm going to show you where my email is. It's right here. So I don't know if you noticed before we went in here, I did have these 10 documents in my registration area, but I did not have a document for import. At this point, what this is telling me is this document went through the OCR. While we were talking, I had a 1 in this document for OCR. It went through the OCR. It has been successfully read. If it had not been successfully read, I would get a documents with errors, and I could click in here and try to figure out, what went wrong. Do I need to resend it? Do I just need to do that situation where I have it on my hard drive and I just drag and drop it into the document? Maybe something's going on with that document with the OCR. Thankfully, we didn't get an error, but I do have it here for import. I can see that it came from me. My email subject was test. It would normally from one of your vendors have, maybe a PO number here, an invoice number here, or something for the subject. And when it was received and when the OCR processed it, I can show it at this point if I want to. It does take a minute. Oh, no, it's not going to open the PDF. If it were a pic, it would. But at this point, I'm going to import this file. This is a task you will need to do. you will see these documents sitting here waiting for import. This is their stop point until you get involved. So I'm going to import this file. And you're going to see this documents to register to bounce up at least to 11, maybe 12 if my split works right. It's taking its own sweet time. I did not have this kind of time lapse when Zoom may be causing some of this. There we go. Oh, I got 15. It split all the pages out, looks like. So if I click in here, I can get a little more specific so that that doesn't happen. I just get it on the invoice number. Or did some of you send some things through? Maybe, maybe not.
No, I don't think anybody here sent anything through.
Okay. Well, there's that email. Ah, yeah, it took each page and thought it was something. Okay. Let's go up here to GE. Let's start here. So GE is one of the invoices that had been read through the OCR that I have been playing with. You'll see that there's a template number. These are the templates that were on underneath that master area where we were just in the purchase category that I was talking about. This template card is associated with this vendor. One of the things, there's also a search text here. And I have told the system to look for the wording GE appliances when it's looking for this vendor and this template. So I can recognize some specific text on the document. And it may be that I get documents that look very similar from multiple GE appliance vendors, and I need to figure out, you know, some sort of text that makes them individual, and that's what I can reference in this search text so that I'm able to know, the OCR is able to figure out what vendor this needs to be associated with. Have I grabbed the right one? Let's click in here. This GE appliances. Does it look right?
Rachel, is that the right vendor for
No,
that?
it's supposed to be GEN002.
GEN0002.
Yes.
Okay. This one? Atlanta,
Yes.
Georgia?
Yes.
Because I've got Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania up here.
But it's the
Yeah.
higher company.
Yeah, it's the, yeah, that's a DBA. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So do we purchase from these and then pay the higher one?
No, we've been paying the GE002. That's for the appliances. And then the GE006 is for the parts. We don't use the GE008. Those
Okay.
are inactive vendors.
So Rachel, are there a lot of invoices that come through that we're not necessarily paying to the remittance shown on the actual invoice?
Yes, some of them.
Okay.
But we're just using this.
So this potentially can be an issue. We're human. We're intelligent. We know that when we see this information, it actually goes to this information. A computer, we can teach it that to a point. Otherwise, we end up, with some issues. So let me do this. We're going to, you said it's the 002?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to remove this template number. And I'm going to choose 002. It created a new template because I have to have a template for every vendor. Is this a hair company? Maybe some good verbiage to look for instead of trying to match my address. This information right here.
It has a matter. It makes a difference because it has a parent company, but what they want the payments to go to is that actual hire or however you pronounce that
Hire company.
hire company.
Mm-hmm.
That's where the payments go, but the actual physical address is what you see in NAV, because that is what we would have on the W-9 form.
I'm sorry, I'm not following that.
Okay, so GE has a parent company, and we have a W-9 for each vendor. On the W-9, it has the physical address of the company, but the payments go to a separate location. Thank you. Payments go to a separate location, which is what you see on the invoice.
Who is the PO for? What vendor number is the PO for?
I'm not understanding your question.
Have we done a purchase order for this purchase invoice?
Sorry,
No.
Elka, the vendor is Gen 002. There's some confusion here because the vendor is Gen 002 and the vendor name is the A hire company.
Mm-hmm.
They're a sub company of GE Appliances, but that really doesn't matter for this purpose.
Mm-hmm.
For this purpose, it's just important that the vendor is A hire company, even though it says GE Appliances and the vendor starts with GEN.
Mm-hmm.
Vendor, for all intents and purposes, is the A hire company.
Okay.
The problem that I think we're going to run into is that we have two different vendors for this same company.
Right.
One we use for appliance purchases and one we use for parts. So we can talk about, we don't have to get into this in the training, but we can talk about maybe why that is.
Mm-hmm.
What I have a question about is can we use that search text to differentiate between the two vendors when we're scanning it in?
You can. This gives us a different level. So part of the problem I see here is that the regular OCR, because this address is PO Box 640506, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and this is Atlanta, Georgia, the OCR would never know this invoice should go to 002. So that's why I'm saying, what is it about this document that I know it should go to Gen 002?
Can we do by the invoice number? Because if it's a GE parts, it starts with 12, 1, 2. And anything that starts with the invoicing as 4 and 5, that would be GE parts.
Rachel, we'll get to that later, but what Telka is saying is that you'll notice that our vendor number Gen 003 has the address that's on the invoice. So that's going to cause a problem for the system, because the system is always going to think that vendor
Isn't
It
it?
is not Gen 002 because our address is not what's coming through on the invoice.
Unless I do something like this search text.
But then we can't use the search text to differentiate between parts and appliances because there's only one option, right?
May I ask if it's, is this pulling in inactive vendors as well? Or block vendors?
Are you asking me?
Yes.
It will not look at blocked vendors. That
Yeah.
is
Oh.
true.
So I guess we don't, the GE00E is blocked as well, so it will not get pulled on that one, right?
That's probably why it pulled this 8. If 3 is blocked, it's probably why it pulled 8 originally because of the Pittsburgh.
Yeah. So I think so that we can continue with the training, because we're probably going to run into lots of quote unquote issues like this.
Mm-hmm.
Let's move past it. But Laura, we're going to have to take an action item to scrub our vendor listing.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I often find that. So in fact, 100%, because you know, it's just data that builds over time, you know, and whether the address is right or not, or, you know, how it's put in there. I see this, like I say, 100% of the time. And you're right. This does cause us to then have an exercise of, you know, cleanup so that the OCR is finding the information that we need. So if we were, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, so let's move on, but I want to make
Sure.
sure that the AP group understands that when it's scanning this information in, as Telka said, it's a computer and it's smart, but it's only as smart as the information it has. So if there is confusing information, such as us having multiple vendors with the same vendor name and different addresses, then where you guys know how to handle those because you're human and you know it, the system doesn't have that information. So it's only using the information that it has, and it's only going to be as good as the information we've given it. So I mentioned Laura, we're going to have a process where we go through and scrub our vendors, but we're going to have to clean all of this stuff up and figure out how we can tell the system which vendors to use and make it clear and have it be you know, something that it can rely on. And then the more we create new vendors or do different things and cause confusion in the system, the less effective this is going to be.
That is very true. And one of the things that just over the last couple of months, we've had a lot of customers. Our CSMs are getting very active. Well, they've always been active, but for some reason, all of a sudden, they're very active about the Continia product. And we've got several customers that are saying, you know, it's just not working like we expected it to. And so they'll engage me and I'll get on a call with them. And what's happened is exactly that. Over time, it's become less effective because of the data that's in. And really, it's just 1 or 2, 3 little easy things that we fix. And then all of a sudden, you know, is reading the document 100% again. They're like, oh my gosh, you know, but it's only as good as the information we're telling it to look for. So that's kind of why I said up front, you know, there's a feel to this and you'll get it. And, you know, it's practice, 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 practice. I can't encourage you enough to practice and play with this thing so that, you know, you do start getting that look and feel to it. And I don't know, do y'all have like vendors that, I know you're an AP group that y'all, do you all work on all vendors or do you have specific vendors that you each work on?
So I think everybody pretty much would work on all of them because while everybody has their subset, we also have backups. So
Gotcha.
somebody might be filling in for somebody else.
Okay. I was
We
just
have to
why
keep
you're
in mind, we have a separate location in Chester that does all their own accounts payable also.
Gotcha. I was just thinking while you're, in test, you might want to split things up just so that somebody's not doing one thing to one invoice and something to another, and you get sidetracked with. You start stomping each other, that type of thing. But y'all can figure that out. So, okay, let's keep going. I think you've kind of got the idea of what's going on with the actual reading of the document. So with me changing this vendor number, the template number becoming new, and me adding this search text, before I go any further, I want to do what's called recognized fields. So I have just told the OCR to kind of reread the thing, and it has, and it's made some assumptions based on that master template of wording that it's looking for, but it may or may not be right, especially the first time I read a document in. So now I have to teach Continia what is on this document, and I do that with my mouse. You're going to notice some blue lines on here and some orange lines on here. The orange lines are the captions, what's called a caption. The blue is the actual value of the data. So just like anything within NAV, I have a header, and then I also have lines. A document can just be header information. If I had a document that did not have all of these lines on it, and it just was, maybe it's a storage fee, and it just gave me a dollar amount, that would just be header information. Whereas lines then has a repeatable, some information that I can pick up about, what I'm picking up, the dollar amounts, and so forth and so on. But I always wanted to find my header information first, starting with invoice number here. If I click on invoice number, that line, you're going to notice that this orange now highlighted itself. But that is not where I'm going to find the invoice number. It says the word invoice number, but this is my invoice number over here. So I'm going to click into the value field. You're going to notice a little down arrow and a little elliptical assist edit here, but I want to be in the value. My right mouse button controls the orange, the caption. So I'm going to use my right mouse to encircle the wording invoice number sign. You'll notice that it went away from invoice number here, and it's now highlighted here. If I were to drill down into the assist edit of this field, the caption just changed to the wording invoice number sign, and it has removed all spaces. In order to pick up the value, I'm going to use my left mouse, and I'm going to make it my area large enough that if this number were a little bigger, it would make sure and pick up the whole thing. So I'm creating a little circular box of blue with my right mouse. No, left. I'm sorry, this is my left. And it creates the blue. You're going to notice that it then populated 12-953666, which is my number. Now that I have taught Continia that is where to find the invoice number, it will always find whatever value is in this upper right-hand corner next to the wording invoice number sign. If I drop down here to invoice date, although the ship date is equivalent to the invoice date, that's not what I'm looking for. So again, I'm going to use my right mouse button, encircle it in orange, and then use my left to encircle the date, and I'll see that value. Now, one of the things that I had to get used to big time, and I still mess up every once in a while, but if my cursor is sitting in this invoice date area, and I go to, let's say, I'm going to start teaching it where the job number is. If I do a right mouse click at that point, you're going to notice my orange went away. And it's sitting right here in an odd space. And the reason that happened is because my cursor was sitting in my invoice date area. My cursor always needs to be in the value field of the field I'm trying to teach it. Let me remark my invoice date here before we move forward. And then I'll move down. As a builder, there are 4 fields here that are included on the header that are not included in the standard package, the standard document capture package. This is a modification for you as a home builder. It's the entity code, job number, job task number, and the approval flow. Both the entity code and the approval flow can come from the job number. The approval flow would come from the person responsible on the job card if you had that populated. I don't believe for this job number you have that populated. If your invoice has the job number on the header, what I mean is the job number is not in the lines. This GE invoice, I don't believe, at least looking at it from somebody that really doesn't know your invoices, I don't believe the job number is in the lines. I did find this GCTH0054 as a job number. So can somebody verify to me that this is the job number on here?
Yes, the job number, the lot number. However, sometimes GE put a wrong lot number on the description. So we go by the address on the sheet too.
Mm-hmm.
That's where we go by.
Okay. Here again, we're trying to link up with data that's in your tables. And but you are able to change this if it's not correct. So we need to teach the system what to read, and then in your review, you know, you can correct it if that's not correct. So let me go ahead and mark this. Why do they send the wrong information? I guess just because they don't know any different, huh? This field is looking up to your job listing. If we need to come back in and make a modification to the system where we actually pick up an address. That doesn't even look like the address on the ship to here.
Excuse me?
Mhm.
On the GE invoices, it's kind of hard. This might be an example that's harder for us to look at right now because it actually has to be applied to, I mean, we have to review the inventory list to get the actual coding. So this might be a hard example to look right now.
Okay.
It's a little different from our normal processes.
Gotcha.
Okay,
Okay.
sorry.
Can we use it just for a sample of how to, because it's a really pretty good example of how to educate the system, and then we can move on to another might be more realistic.
I think that's fine, but Tucker, let me ask a question because I don't know that, you know, a lot of our invoices that we might be using won't necessarily have the job number on it.
Correct.
This one happens to have it as the PO number, but we might get, I mean, we could get any number of invoices that we might be pulling in that the vendor just doesn't put our job number on it.
Uh-huh.
So that's a required field, but if it's not something that is on the face of the invoice, then we just tell this template, like, don't even look for it.
Yes.
And know that we have to type it in as we're processing that.
Yes, either that or there are required fields in the standard product that have been like unlinked for Builder. And since these fields have been added for you, they are unlinked. You can actually register a document without a job number. And then when it goes out to the approval portal, your folks on the ground can put it there. So, you know,
Yeah, guys, we'll have to talk about how we want that to happen, but I'm assuming that before we send it out for approval, AP is responsible for putting that information in.
okay.
So that's not necessarily always true because, say, for like Roy's team, they can have one invoice that goes to 5 different jobs, and it's only based on the project manager knowing what occurred out at the site of how it would get coded. So AP would never necessarily know what job to put it to.
Okay.
And if you don't know the information, that's perfectly fine. You can register the document out to a purchase invoice and then allow the PMs or the folks on the ground to populate that information from the portal. The thing is, you won't be able to post the invoice until you have all the information, because NAV is going to stop you from, you know, posting if all the true rules aren't there. You know, we don't have a GL account number, we don't have job numbers, we don't have amounts, you know, that type of stuff.
So if we get an invoice in, we scan it, and we don't assign a required field, we send it out for approval. When all that comes back, it, you know, say the invoice has been approved, but whoever it was sent out to approval didn't code it. Maybe they didn't know what the code was supposed to be, or maybe AP is supposed to code it, you know, with their notes when it comes back, something like that. There is a stage where AP receives that approved invoice back and can adjust the coding prior to actually posting it.
Correct. Correct. Yes, it will remain an unposted purchase invoice until AP posted.
Okay.
Okay. Alrighty, so from the header information, we're going to want to teach it as much information as we know here. Plus, we have to tell it both these 3 fields: amount excluding tax, tax amount, and amount including tax. If we do not have any tax, that can be left blank. But if there is a difference in the amount excluding tax and the amount including tax, you're going to continue to have this a red error telling you that these two amounts don't match. So we have to at least have a total amount of expected amount here. I think, if I'm not mistaken, the full amount is up here. So I can come in to my amount excluding tax, and I can actually mark the same field. If I go down here to amount including tax, we'll see that it found this amount due in the 7839.71. I can either mark this invoice amount, or I can do the same as the amount including tax. And I'm going to do that just to show you that I can duplicate it. So here again, I'm going to mark that field with my right mouse button, and then mark the amount with my left. And now my amounts equal each other. And my error went away because of my amounts not equaling. You're going to notice this person responsible could not be found. That's because this job number does not have a person responsible on it in your system. This is not an error, it's just a warning, allowing you to then do something with that if you wanted to. I'm also getting that this vendor invoice number already exists, and more than likely it does, because this looks like an old invoice and it's probably in your system. So at that point you would know, oops, I already have that invoice number. Before I hit, so I'm going to teach the system as much information as I know in my header. This is all that I know and all that I want to teach it. So I'm going to, before I head off to the lines, I'm once again going to say recognize fields and make sure that none of this changes. My amounts didn't go away. I've taught it well. And yes, it just did a reread, and it found all of the fields right where I wanted them to be. Now I'm going to head off to the lines. The lines are under the document card. And once again, I see the full document. I see the header that I just populated. And now I have this line area. On my line, you're going to see this, okay, translate type, translate number, entity, job, task. Let me shrink some of these up. Quantity, unit cost, and line amount. The only fields required on the lines down here are the quantity, unit cost, and line amount. The rest of them can be entered if you have that information. Otherwise, it's just going to populate into the purchase invoice without any of that information for the lines itself. Now, at this moment, if I've got a job number on the header, that job number is not populating on the lines. I have talked to Continia, and they are going to make that change for us because they feel like that's logical. So if you do find the job number on the header, we're going to populate the lines with that same job number. You also have invoices that have the job numbers on the lines themselves because they're for multiple jobs. That Bramall, I'm sorry, I don't know your vendor names, but that one that we read in earlier is like that. Your job number is actually on the lines itself. So the job number, you would not populate a job number on the header for that one because you have different job numbers on that invoice. The lines are created when I have something that's duplicatable. I don't even know if that's a word, but in this situation it is. And the information must be on all the same vertical line. Me saying that, I can pick up this gross unit price, I can pick up this net unit price, I can pick up this extended, I can pick up the quantity, and this verbiage right here. I cannot pick up this verbiage saying package appliance here because it's above where I find all the rest of this information. I can't read multiple lines. So if you find one of those invoices that has the information on multiple lines, we have to kind of evaluate what line is more important and then physically populate the rest of the information. So I did tell you that the only fields that I really need are the quantity, the unit cost, the line amount, but I probably want to pick up this information here just for description purposes. So I'm going to start learning or teaching Continia these fields. I'm going to come here to description. Using my right mouse button, I'm going to tell it, I'm going to mark the header of the entire area that I potentially want to pick up for my description. For the lines, I don't mark the blue. I just mark the orange. For the quantity, I'm going to mark the quantity. For unit cost, I'm going to pick up net unit. And for line amount, I'm going to pick up the word extended. Do you see how there's multiple, there's this line that's before the line that I'm wanting to pay attention to, and the same here, the same here. There's a field that I can mark to tell it to pay attention to the lines that only have like the unit cost and the line amount, so that it's not trying to read these lines that would not have that information. For line amount, if I drill into the little assist, and I expand my show more fields, let me get this card pulled out. Each field on the header and the lines also have what's called a template field card. This template field card is the knowledge for this field, and it is part of the template for this vendor. Each field has a card. It has a field name, and it also contains the caption that I marked in the orange. So every time I see the word extended for the lines, it knows that the information underneath that are the lines that I need to populate. When I check this search value, it's going to search for the value in up underneath this caption. This checkbox called required means that this field is required for a line to be valid. That's the field that I'm talking about checking so that I don't pick this package, appliance package, up because it doesn't have a dollar amount field. If it's required, it's going to pop to the next line where it finds that value so that this is the line that it will read. It will miss this line, it will read this one. It will miss this line, it will read this one, so forth and so on. When it gets down here, it's going to read every one of these because there is a value there and this field is required. There are some times that I want to just create a formula, and we'll talk about that here in a little bit when I've got a better example of that. Or I can just have a fixed value. I can set quantity to equal 1 all the time if I wanted to do that, if I didn't have quantity on this invoice. I start looking for it on the first page, or I could tell it to find it on the last page. The type of data I'm looking for in this situation is a number, but if I were to look at the box for my field called description, I would be looking for text. I can also look for a date, a Boolean field, which is a yes or a no, or I can look up a value in a table. I can also stop the line recognition if one of these things happen. This is very rare, but we may have to engage this with some of your invoices, just depending on the way they look. This used document separator. I told you earlier when we were over on the purchase document category that I had set up that other vendor, if it found invoice number, it would separate out each page. If I were to check this, line amount would be a document separator. Line amount's not, so we don't want to check that. But invoice number for that vendor is, I have it checked. Here are some number settings. If I have a field that is not in standard code, I would tell the field what field on the purchase line to populate. You'll notice that if I drill into this, I see all the fields that are available on a purchase invoice line. And then whether I could transfer blank values. Here's some recognition information and some rule information. Field translations. I can tell the system to translate if it sees some specific codes. So if it were to see a plus sign, I'm telling it to blank that out so that I don't bring a plus sign into my line amount on my purchase invoice. If it were to see the double vertical line, it's blanking it out. If it found a divide sign, blank it out. We can add to these field translations if there's something within the code that we don't want to bring forward. But normally in a number field, we really don't have the translations that are standard or sufficient. We don't have to worry about adding to that. That's the line amount, the unit cost, the quantity. Let's look at the description card. The field name is description. Here again, here's my caption. It's taken what I've marked in orange and removed a bunch of the spaces. It's looking for the wording model description. This field is not required. We don't want it marked as required because then we would be picking up those lines that don't have a dollar value on them. However, we are telling the system to search for it. It is text. We've got very little translation because we want to bring all the text in. Now, what I do want to do is go to this number field. I don't have a number. This would be an item number if I were carrying this. And I want to uncheck that I want to search for this value. Say okay. Same with my job task number. Okay, it's not marked required or search. Job number, it's not required or search. Entity code, same. So as far as I know, I've got my lines ready to educate. I'm going to click on recognize fields and cross my fingers that I've done everything right. And I have. Once I get check boxes over here on the left-hand side, I know that I've got valid information that has come into my system. Now you're going to note that you've got blue lines down here now. And this is what you can review and go, okay, did we pick all the lines up? Are the values coming through straight? Do we have the correct quantities? Does my description look good? These are the type of things you'll want to, verify and make sure that it's learned it properly. This is also the information that will transfer over to your purchase invoice. I'm going to stop right here. Questions? Talk to me. Is this kind of cool?
Can you repeat again what fields are required to be populated?
Yes, in order for you to be able to create a purchase invoice from this document, we've got to have the quantity, the unit cost, and the line amount. And right now, before we make this this correction that we're going to make, you're going to have to, you either cannot have a job number here, or you'll have to have it here. But like I say, this is something we're going to fix for your environment. Right now, it's either or. You either have it on the header or you have it on the lines. You can't have the header feed the lines.
So my question is, here based in Winchester, we don't use job numbers. We would only use GL lines or inventory items.
Mm-hmm.
Would we be mapping so that it knew which GL account to choose?
You could do that. We don't have a number. Is this your item number? Do you carry this as an item number?
We don't. This isn't one of our invoices, so no.
Oh, okay.
I mean, something like we would end up posting to a GL code just because it's something we purchased, but we don't use jobs at all at base.
Yeah.
And even here in Fairfax, some of our invoices also go directly to a GL code and don't necessarily use a job.
Mm-hmm. So you can either put the GL code here under this translate type, and put the number here. But it's actually going to want a number. So I guess with y'all's system, let's see, let me refresh this. It's going to get rid of. With your system, you're going to want to put the GL coding on the purchase invoice side instead of put it here. Just let the OCR read what the OCR will read, and then you'll put the GL code into the purchase invoice.
So we would populate that annually once it's in the system.
Yes. Yes. All right. We have, I'm getting an error message that approval flow is not correct, because if I drill into my approval code field, I'm requiring it. So if I uncheck that and re-recognize fields, that error should go away. Get rid of this again. My vendor invoice number, because you know, it's been seen before, I'm going to go ahead and just put a -1 on here, so that will go away. And then it's also telling me the sum of all my lines does not balance with my total. So I would then try to figure out why. Let's see, we've got 2120, 670, 1015, 895, 410.
You only have one.
On the second page, the sales tax is on the second page.
I don't have a second page. So I must have just gotten one page here. So you think, you're saying the difference is sales tax?
Yes, it's the sales tax.
Okay. Let me do something here real quick. Let me figure out what the difference between the two is. I'm using my calculator on my phone. Okay, 73. Oh no, 7839.
Probably an item on page 2 also.
Minus 7276. Yeah. Yeah, maybe. So and this would continue on to a page 2. I mean, it would read that. So that wouldn't be a problem. I can add a line down here manually. Say quantity 1 and put my 563.71 and 563.71. And that should then bring me, I don't want to re-recognize because then I'll lose that line. Why didn't it? Let's see if it'll go ahead and register. So I know I've got this balanced. It's probably not refreshing, and I don't want to do my recognize fields again because I don't want to I don't want to lose my tax line here. Let's see if this will register with that showing. Once I have the document fully learned and good to go, then I'm going to register this document. Oh, it's not going to do it. Oh yeah, maybe it, yay. It was just being slow on me. All right, job purchase invoice. I have now created a purchase invoice from my OCR. Here's the document. To answer your question, Laura, you've always got your document available to you. It's also here. It's it's attached and always will be. It will follow through with the posted purchase invoice. Here are my lines with my dollar amounts. And at this point, you would, either assign your job numbers, your job task numbers, or, your GL codes. You could put your GL code. Ooh, that's pulling that description away. It's not. I'm gonna have to see how to get that not to revalidate this. The builder information is a little bit different in the way that it's validating than the normal. So I will take that away as homework to figure out how not have that description go away. We don't want that. But you would assign it to the account number or the job, so forth and so on, prior to sending it for approval. It's not available for approval right now because it's not legit yet. This is where I want to stop, and I want to go back to the documents and look at more situations. Any questions about how we got to where we're at?
Just a little side note, every time that we enter the lines, we have to do either the job number or the GL account before we do the description, otherwise the description gets deleted. And I think that's what's happening here.
Yeah, I think so too. I'll talk to John about that. Like I say, the job number, job task, all of this is associated with the builder product, and that GL account numbers come across as the job numbers and task numbers relate to each other. And so yes, that is part of what's going on there. So
I have a question. I noticed you're in the job purchase invoice form. Is there a distinction between the job purchase invoice and the purchase invoice forms?
Well, the job purchase invoice is the one that Continia is going to populate in the builder environment, because everything's driven from the jobs.
Okay.
Or a big percentage of the stuff is driven by jobs.
But stuff that's non-related can still flow through there. It acts the same way.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Other questions? No? Okay. Well, I'm gonna close this, and let's go back now. And you'll notice that instead of this document being open, it is now registered. I can reopen it if I need to. And when I reopen it, it deletes the job purchase invoice I just created. It pulls it back in case you need to make changes. At this point, the next time I get an invoice from this hair company, it should find this verbiage, this text, and immediately know that it is associated with Gen 002 and the template 11. And I don't have to go through all of that, because I've now educated the template of where to find all the information. Let's look at some more of our open ones. Okay, so this is maybe industrial. So I can't read that label, that logo. Tell me about what I'm looking at here. Work order, order number. What information am I getting off of this invoice?
We'll get the invoice number, invoice date, the vendor, the amount, and then the work order number on the description. The work order number will be on the description.
Okay. Do I have a job number here or no?
No.
Okay. How do I know then who's going to approve this?
The address on the service is on the second page.
Yeah, it's in the second.
Or in the first line item, but it's dark and you can read. But
This?
usually it's on the invoice where the address is, and that we're gonna go to the superintendent for approval. Which party or community?
Okay, so let me look at page 2. So this address is telling you what job it'll be associated with?
Yes.
If you go to the first page on the yes, if you go to the first page, it usually puts the job name, but it's not showing fully. It should be Summit.
It is.
Birchwood
Birchwood
Condo Summit. Oh yeah.
But you cannot read it because it's like.
It is the job name, but it's not the job number.
The community.
So, I guess one of the questions that I would have, and it may not be possible to do this, is it possible to, kind of work with your vendors and ask them to put the job numbers on their invoices?
I'm not sure, but normally some vendors even have issues putting the right lot number or address on invoice. So, yes.
I do understand.
That's why sometimes we always look at the first page and then the ticket attached to the second page.
Gotcha.
And that's where we can see the community, and then we will figure out what job number to use.
Yeah.
So I think what's important right now is that we understand how the system works.
Sure.
So as we continue to use the system over the next few months and learn more about it, there may be quite a bit that you can't get off of a scan invoice, that we still get the document image, so that's good, but the OCR doesn't actually populate all the fields. So, as a phase 2 to this, we may then want to reach out to vendors and start to clean up their invoicing to us so that the OCR can pick up more of the fields to reduce the amount that we actually have to type in.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I was thinking. So, if you can get to that point, that'd be great. If not, then it's gonna just, bring in the information that it can, and then, you can manually populate the rest of it. So, let me ask a question. So when this document came through the OCR, it is choosing this vendor. I don't think that's correct.
Probably because of that address there.
Right, exactly.
Which
So
is
what?
our corporate address.
Who is this vendor?
IDS.
IBS or IBS?
D.
IND001.
Oh, okay. I should know, the AP department knows. IND001?
Yes.
Ah, industrial disposal. Okay. Let's say okay. So when I changed that vendor, it built this template, and for this search text, I think I'll just try to grab this address right here. It helps if I use the right side. I need the blue instead of the orange. There we go. So now I'm going to do recognize fields again and come down. It does look like it's finding the right invoice number. I think I'd rather, instead of it just look at the word number, look at the full invoice number. So I just marked that in the orange. My invoice date, see, it's coming down to the lines, which seems a little odd to me. So I'm going to use my right mouse to highlight invoice date, my left to highlight the date itself. More than likely, I don't have an entity code. I don't have task number. The approval flow, it's wanting it to be required because this is innately how it wants to direct who will get this invoice. You could populate this manually if you want to, or we can make it not required.
Hi, Des. Can I ask a question? Because this particular vendor is a standard job task number. Can we set that up?
Set up
The job task number is always standard, is always the same. Can we set that up that each time we receive this particular invoice vendor, it will be coded to just that job task number?
certainly. We probably want that on the lines, but now you said the job number is different, right? Or the job number is the same too?
No, the job number is different. It's the job task is always the same.
Okay.
Will the address, the first line there, will always get an invoice every month? That one, yes. For that, is it possible to have this recognize that and just pull it through? The amount may change, but that's it. So we'll have the same address, we'll have the same job task number. Yes.
And the amount is the only one that changes the invoice number. And then the memo, the description.
Okay, so do you not get this invoice for other jobs?
Yes, that's what we're asking. The line,
Address.
the address.
If we can associate the address with a particular
Job.
job.
Yeah, so I don't have the system where it will read the address and turn it into a job number.
Okay.
Okay, got it.
Unless I can say, does that say Little Hales Terrace and Beaver Crossing? Is that what it says?
That you would be able to see that clearer on the second page, I think.
No, this address has another, maybe another job as well, so we can't.
This right here?
As
It's not going to match anything that we have in the system as a job description, address, or anything. It's literally just a street intersection because.
Right, but what about if we put for the
Summit.
Birchwood Summit?
Birchwood Summit
exactly.
condos will be the name of the job.
This Birchwood Condo Summit would be the name of the job?
Yes.
Okay. This is going to float though. I mean, depending on the address, it's not always going to be right here smack dab in the center. So what I'm thinking in my head is if I came in here and told it to look for Birchwood Condo Summit and I did a translation from and to the job number, I could do that. But that does require that this stays somewhat consistent on its spacing because I'm looking at a particular verbiage for that. Does that make sense? No? Let's
No,
see.
we can just skip it because we were worried that if the vendor generate a new invoice and then they change that, it was gonna.
And then we'll also have different work order
Yes.
amounts.
Yeah, that may be something that we have to, you know, manually handle. And let's go over there and kind of look at it. So, amount, including tax and my tax amount. I probably want to pick up this invoice total.
The total, yes, the total.
Looks like I don't have tax, and I want to pick up that very same field for my total. Alrighty. So before I go over to my lines, I'm going to do recognize fields again. And right now I don't have any errors, so that's kind of cool. Go over to my document card. Now I'm going to start teaching it the lines. So are these I guess the work orders are not associated with the address at all, or the job number at all, right? They're just associated with whatever number is over here. 62, yeah. And that should probably maybe your PO number. So you want me to pick up the work order number in the description field?
If you guys are talking, you might be muted. She's asking you a question.
So for example, for this invoice, we don't have to divide it in each line. We just need the total because everything's coded to the same coding. So we need the memo to have all of the work orders, but we do one line. Is there a way that we could do that?
I can't read in all of the work orders into one line. Is that what you're saying?
Okay.
They only put the work order numbers in the invoice memo as part of the description for the invoice.
Gotcha. Yeah. If they were strung out, I could do that.
Can I ask a question, guys? Why not just have this pull in those as separate lines, and then throw the work order number in the description for those lines?
I mean, I guess if it's being scanned, it doesn't matter, but just as us keying it, we wouldn't do that if we were doing it manually.
Yeah, but remember, the part of the goal of this is to speed up, you know.
That's what I said, that, yes.
So if it could scan it, then I would take advantage of that.
I think it doesn't matter. It's fine because
Right.
as long as you just have one line item and the description can be breakdown and the amounts breakdown, I think it's fine.
Yeah, that's why I said it doesn't matter, but it's just easier when we are keying it manually to do that online. But if on this, it doesn't matter, they're going to see the same thing.
All right, let me do recognize fields. I have marked my work order, my quantity, my amount total. And I am getting 3 lines because this one is 0. Do I want to include zeros? Looks like it was canceled.
Yes. Yeah.
We do?
No, we don't.
Oh, okay. All right. So see these slashes that have come in here? That's picking up from probably that line being drawn. I mean, that circle being drawn. See, we've got the top one's got a backslash and the bottom one's got a a forward slash. This will be a great example for me to show you how to use this translation. If I don't want that slash to end up in my description, I can go to the assist edit, come down here and tell it if there's a backslash, leave it blank. If there's a forward slash, leave it blank.
Oh,
Now, if I recognize fields again, those are gone.
that's great.
I don't have any errors. Looks like I've got everything good here. My template is now complete and recognized all of my information. So I'm going to register. And at this point, here's my document. Here's all the information associated. It's linked. I do feel like if I start putting job numbers in here right now that I'll lose this description. I need to talk to John about not validating this description. But that should be a fairly easy little fix. So, but here's my amount. And, you know, I can populate this, then we would send for approval, so forth and so on. You think you want to get your hands on it?
I think it looks pretty clear. I have one question though. Our normal, some of the, on the lines, we don't use some of those. Is that able to be customized a little bit?
Oh, great question. I'm sorry. We've talked a lot about lines. If you don't have lines, then you just define the information in the header.
Okay.
And you've got entity code. You could put job number, job task, your amounts, and then you register and go forth at that point.
Then if we don't need a column on the lines, then we also adjust that.
Yeah.
Okay.
You can make it
Like
not
one,
required.
right?
Yeah, you can make it not required.
Okay.
Like this one probably wouldn't have lines. It would just be a header type situation. But we are out of time, and I'm going to have to jump.
And see what other issues we encounter.
Laura, we'll kind of communicate about getting the emails set up and sending the approval emails so that they can get into the portal.
Yeah,
And
I can actually get all of their emails set up today so that that'll be all set.
Perfect. We want to start practicing. Like I say, it's a look and feel. We have to, learn it. So, and let it learn us. So, thank y'all for your time. I appreciate your attention and everything, and look forward to our next session.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.